folks, it is August 21st, 2025, and of course, a lot's going on in the world. I'll be talking about that here on Pod TV on the World Edition. A Ukrainian man has been arrested over the Nord Stream pipeline attack. So, that is something that folks are talking about as he's been held in Italy over the blast mystery over that Nord Stream gas pipeline. So, that is something that folks are definitely talking about in the news. And Xi Jinping makes a rare visit to Tibet to showcase control as the Dalai Lama succession looms. So China's Tibet marks anniversary with songs, dances, and reminders of party's rule. So definitely that is something going on as there was a grand ceremony and parade marking 60 years of Chinese Communist Party rule in Tibet. And Xi hammers home his message over control over Tibet in a rare visit. And Israel pounds Gaza City as military takes first step in its offensive. So as Israel begins the offensive on Gaza City, an exhausted military may face a manpower problem. So Israel bombards Gaza City, launching a new offensive amid starvation crisis. Israel called up or is calling up 60,000 reservists as it plans a new phase of war in Gaza. And with moves on the West Bank and Gaza City, Israel is defying global outcry. So Israel approved a settlement plan to erase the idea of a Palestinian state, and it looks like they have approved that controversial E1 settlement plans in the West Bank. And Smotrich rejoices a settlement plan that erases two-state delusion gets the final green light, is what some folks are saying, particularly at the Times of Israel. And a court ruling threatens to disrupt Britain's asylum policy. So, number of asylum seekers in hotels up 8% in past year, but falls slightly since March, is what new data is showing out of the whole area of London and all in that general area. So, Wakefield Council carefully considering asylum hotel ruling. An action to tackle number of asylum seekers coming to UK is an important step to restoring order, says Cooper. And Trump is asking Ukraine to pay an impossible price. So definitely that's something that people are talking about. So Trump met with Putin and Zelensky, and folks are asking what's next for the Russia-Ukraine peace talks. And there's an outcry over a French streamer's death on air as authorities probe an allegation of abuse. And the Mexico City mayor says police have arrested 13 in connection with the May killings of two staffers. And definitely that's something going on in the news as well. And the New York Times is reporting how Tiffany Trump's husband benefited from proximity to power. So that's something that folks are talking about as well. And Netanyahu escalates attack on Australia's Albanese as Jewish groups urge calm. So Australia hits back at Netanyahu amid an escalating diplomatic row over Gaza. So definitely that's something that folks are talking about as well. And ICC deploys new U.S. sanctions on judges and prosecutors. Trump expands sanctions against ICC officials over Israel-U.S. investigation. So that is something that is definitely in the news. And Brazilian police say ex-president Bolsonaro had planned to flee to Argentina. So Jair Bolsonaro planned to seek asylum in Argentina is what Brazil's police are saying. So Brazil police found court documents accusing Bolsonaro of planning to flee to Argentina. So that is where apparently he was trying to get to. An Ukrainian attack disrupts Russian petrol supplies and pushes up prices. So fuel shortages hit Russia's Far East as Ukrainian strikes take refineries offline. So definitely that is something that folks are talking about in terms of the oil in that part of the world. And definitely there's still folks trying to figure out what's going to be going on with the hearing, or not the hearings, but the meeting between Zelensky and Putin, and that'll take place in the next week or two and everything like that. As a matter of fact, Fortune said Zelensky's speed run of gratitude, 9 thank yous in 1 minute. So apparently he was definitely giving the thank yous this time as well. And hotter summers and overcrowding threatening Europe's tourist economy. So in Norway, are coolcations taking a toll is one of the questions that's being asked. And killings and gang rapes are running rampant in Congo, is what some of the human rights groups are saying. So massacres in eastern Congo cast doubt on U.S. mediated peace deal. So definitely that is something that folks are talking about as Rwanda-backed rebels killed over 140 civilians in eastern Congo, according to some of the human rights groups that are looking at that particular case. And my 113-year-old wooden church in Sweden was rolled away. Drone footage shows the final legs of the Swedish church's move. So definitely, it looks like it had to move to a new home and all along those lines. And I've actually seen sometimes when they've moved houses, and it can be a fascinating thing to see when they have to do that and how it is done. And Trump's policies shake up foreign relations. India stands to gain. So did Trump's tariff war force India and China to mend ties? So it looks like Trump's tariffs are pushing India closest to America's strategic rivals, China and Russia. So we'll see how this all plays out as well. And Japan is proposing an economic zone linking Indian Ocean to Africa. So TICAD African Development Conference got underway in Japan, and JICA which is the is to designate 4 Japanese cities as hometowns for African nations. So Japan is eyeing low-cost debt to mitigate Africa blow from AIDS cuts. And China's military parade was going to show off their hypersonic missiles and autonomous weapons. So definitely that's something that folks are talking about as well. And the Pope calls for fasting and prayer for peace in Middle East and Ukraine, as definitely that's one of the things that he's doing in terms of his efforts to try to get some peace as well. So Pope Leo set a day of fasting and prayer for peace on Friday. That'll be this coming Friday. And he said we must work hard and pray hard. So he's calling for a day of prayer and fasting for peace. And the folks are asking how the towering dominance of the Bolivia Socialist Party came tumbling down. So definitely it looks like it elected or elevated a centrist, shaking up the political landscape. And we'll see how this all plays out and who wins that election, as it will not be a candidate from the left as it has historically been. I'm going to get to some stuff from the U.S. and I'm going to bring in Rick Rosner, bring in some of the other folks that are here. I think John's with me, and we'll see who else might join us as well. Texas and California race forward with the rival redistricting efforts. So Texas Dems abruptly leave call with Newsom and other party members after being told that she's committing felony. So Democrats across the U.S. ripped the Texas House passage of new congressional lines, and the California Supreme Court rejects Republican efforts to stop redistricting as legislators seek vote on a plan. And Hurricane Erin makes its closest pass to the U.S., bringing big waves and flooding. Hurricane Erin pounded the North Carolina coast as it starts to move away, and the formation chances increasing for system behind Hurricane Erin. I believe that might be Ferdinand and something along those lines. So we'll see what goes on in that space, but it did look like it whipped the coast of North Carolina and then was veering back, I think, toward the ocean and everything like that. But we'll see what kind of damage was done on our coast here in North Carolina. And Trump backs off of higher tariffs for EU pharma and chips. So U.S. and EU spell out tariffs for autos, pharmaceuticals, and more. So definitely looks like there might be a trade pact going on in that base. And California parole officials to decide if Menendez brothers should be released. So as Menendez brothers seek parole, a new tour visits the crime scene. So Menendez brothers confront parole board before Governor Newsom decides whether to set the killers free. And definitely this will be interesting to see what goes on in that space. And Tulsi Gabbard has announced a plan to cut the intelligence staff by half. So she's planning to cut the ODNI staff by nearly 50%. So we'll see how this plays out and what impact it has on our efforts in intelligence. And meme Lord Newsom rounds Republicans with Trump trolling posts. So Newsom's Trump Act wins raised from Democrats, and J.D. Vance reacts to Gavin Newsom's new nickname for him. And I have to see what Rick Rosner has found out about that new nickname, because I didn't see what the nickname is, but I'm sure that Rick might do some research and find out. And Boston ICE chief not backing down. He blasts the liberal Mayor Wu over public safety crisis. This cannot be normalized. Blue cities and states rebuff White House over immigration enforcement. So definitely that's something going on as well. And apparently the Washington Post was asking folks what they thought about the Trump takeover. some folks were saying that they knew that they needed to have tighter security, and others were not trying. Were trying to figure out what was going on and why it was needed to have the National Guard there. I did see that on one of the newscasts and everything along those lines. And Frank Caprio, the judge whose kindness led to online fame, has died at the age of 88. So, nicest judge in the world is how he was described, and he died after a cancer recurrence. So, definitely looks like he had passed of pancreatic cancer and all along those lines. And the U.S. sends 3 warships toward the coast of Venezuela as Maduro is mobilizing 4.5 million people in his country. So Venezuela mobilizes its militia after the U.S. says it's deploying military forces to waters around Latin America. So it's sending some forces, and apparently he's mobilizing some people. So we'll see what goes on in that space as well. And an appeals court panel clears way for Trump administration to end DPS for Honduran Nepalese folks and folks from Nicaragua. So Trump administration for now can end deportation protections for thousands from Honduras, Nepal, and Nicaragua is what the courts are saying. And a New Hampshire mother killed her husband and 2 kids before fatally shooting herself, according to what that state attorney general was saying, and all along those lines. And Stephen Miller is pledging even more resources for the D.C. crackdown, and J.D. Vance booed during a hamburger handout to National Guard troops in D.C. Vance's trip for burgers crashes into Trump's D.C. takeover. So that's definitely something that folks are talking about as well. And Uganda has agreed to a deal with the U.S. to take deported migrants, and that is something going on as well. So some of the deported migrants may be going to Uganda, even though there are contradiction reports, because the AP News is saying that they have agreed to take them, whereas Reuters yesterday was saying they had not agreed to take them. So we'll see what goes on and if they are actually heading that way as well. And the former Los Angeles Fire Department Chief, Christine Crowley, is filing legal claims against LA and Mayor Karen Bass. She's claiming that Bass ran a misinformation campaign and defamed her to save herself. So we'll see what goes on in this area as well. And a new milk flavor and renovations coming to the New York State Fair Milk Bar. So Governor announces plans to modernize State Fair's Milk Bar. So definitely we'll see how this goes on as we're at day 2 at the New York State Fair, and people are talking about what menu and other items they've got going on over there. I think our state fair here in North Carolina comes like maybe around October, but there are state fairs that are already going on in some states and others that are waiting to happen. And an ex-Eric Adams advisor allegedly tried to give the governor a wad of cash hidden in a potato chip bag. So ex-Adams advisor Winnie Greco handed a city reporter cash stuffed in a bag of potato chips. So definitely that ought to be interesting, and we'll see how that plays out in that case as well. And riders and drivers are worrying after SEPTA reveals plans for upcoming service cuts and all along those lines. SEPTA warns of transit chaos for Philadelphia Eagles home opener at Lincoln Financial Field amid those service cuts in Pennsylvania. So that's some of the news that is going on and all along those lines. I'll bring in Rick Rosner, bring in John. I don't have anybody else with me today, at least not as of yet. So how are you doing?
All right, good. But here's a story that hasn't gotten enough coverage.
Okay.
Trump wants to get rid of mail-in balloting. Now, that has gotten some coverage, but why does he hate mail-in ballots? Because mail-in ballots leave a paper trail. There's a ballot, you send it in, and it's harder to rig an election, a vote, when there's a paper ballot there as evidence for the way people voted. And there's mathematical evidence of what mathematicians have called non-human voting patterns in the elections of 2016, 2020, and 2024, particularly in swing states. Republicans make a lot of noise about rigged votes, but the evidence is on the Democrats' side, but Democrats are pussies and have been intimidated into not complaining about it even though there's been evidence in the last three presidential elections that if you look at electronic voting machines, that machines that received fewer than 300 votes, half the machines, the Harris wins in 2024, and half Trump wins. It goes back and forth. But in the machines that registered more than 400 votes, Trump wins all of them. That's what's called a non-human voting pattern. And if people theorize, now these voting machines are supposed to be air gapped. They're not supposed to be connected to the internet because you can hack them via the internet. But you can also hack them via the power cord.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy who owns the company that supplies the power cord, according to this one report, is frickin' Leonard Leo, who runs the Federalist Society, who got us all the hyper-conservative new SCOTUS justices, and an old-ass billionaire, conservative billionaire, gave Leonard Leo a $1.6 billion power cord company. Why would all this is just crazy stuff that like nobody has looked at.
Yep.
And so anyway, vote by me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. And we have talked about it here.
It's funny. I was just going to say it's funny that Democrats sometimes go down the path that the GOP or Republicans do, conspiracy theories. So, Rick, the only thing I would say to that is if there's any evidence showing that there was any funny business, bring it forward. Whoever is complaining about that, bring the evidence forward. Litigate it in a court of law. I always kind of shake my head when I hear these kind of stories of suspected. I'm going to call it a conspiracy theory. Bring the evidence forward. There's plenty for us to criticize Trump and his administration for, but going down of spreading these kind of conspiracies is never a good idea, in my opinion.
Well, no, the deal is that we could the evidence in favor of rigging by the Republicans is much stronger than, the Republicans went to court 62 times and lost every time. The Democrats don't do jack shit. They're pussies who lean back, in 2016, an FBI investigation found out that the Russians had the ability to hack voting machines, but that they didn't. They held back. Because the Russians are so restrained in their behavior. So it may be a conspiracy. Hold on. Let me finish. So yeah, what I'm saying might be bullshit. It might be if poked at, the evidence may fall apart. But the Democrats are too intimidated to even litigate or examine the evidence. They just let it be because the Republicans own the vote rigging space. They do all the complaining, and the Democrats don't want to sound like the Republicans. So this shit goes unexamined. And yeah, every conspiracy theory should be scrutinized mathematically and otherwise, but you shouldn't be intimidated into ignoring evidence.
And here both of you are saying,
share your concern with your politician or your representative, and bring that forward. Again, I'm not here to advise any Democratic politician what to do or how to fight. I just kind of, every time I kind of hear these kind of things, it's like I've seen this playbook before, these kind of stories before on the Republican side, and just bring any forward, bring it to your what do you call it, the representatives.
This is
within the Democratic Party.
I mean, I've
Court of
seen the
public
graph.
opinion.
Hold on, I've seen the graphs, and they look fairly convincing. But somebody would have to do an analysis comparing what they say is the rigged vote versus the voting patterns in elections that weren't rigged, and show that there's a statistical difference. Has anybody even done this frickin' analysis? I don't know. In 2016, you might remember, Jill Stein said, this third-party candidate said, donate money to me after the election and I will get this analysis done. And people donated $3 million to her. And she didn't do shit. She says, I'll get it done. I'll challenge it in the courts. She didn't do shit. She took the money and ran. And that was it. That was it for Democrats checking for fraud. Was a semi-fraudster third-party candidate just, didn't do crap about it after promising she would.
Yeah, and that's a lot of probably different things you got to check into, including, like you said, those voting machines and who owns them and who doesn't own them and where they're.
I mean, what it comes down to is mathematical analysis. Do these voting patterns could it have happened by chance? If I take a penny and I flip it 10 times and it comes up heads 8 times out of 10, that's probably not a rigged freaking penny, because it can happen by chance, right?
Right.
A mediocre baseball team can win 8 out of 10 games, and even and during a season, the Colorado Rockies in the past have played 3 games against the worst team in baseball, against the Dodgers, one of the best teams. The Rock, things can happen. The Rockies won 2 out of 3 games. So things can happen by chance. What you need is a durable statistical analysis, and it just
You're presuming that what you said earlier about the statistical anomalies are accurate. So again, I'm not going to go there, but
right, but still,
I understand. I understand what you're saying.
Without an analysis, you don't know, and nobody does the freaking analysis.
Yeah, I can't help you with that.
Yeah, you have to find somebody that wants to do the analysis or something like that, and we'll see if there's anybody that maybe listening to this that wants to do the analysis, because you probably have to do it over several elections just to see how they fall and everything like that.
And one thing we do know, you can't rely on journalists to do the analysis, because journalists are not mathematicians. They're mathematically ignorant. There are a couple, there are Steve Kornacki on MSNBC is decent at presenting statistical facts. Is he statistically sophisticated? Maybe in some areas, but I don't know that there's anybody at MSNBC who's capable, or any of these channels that's capable of doing high-level statistical analysis.
And maybe we can do the maybe Nick can do the analysis. After all, he is a climate change expert.
Well, no, Nick knows people who could. Nick knows actuaries. Actuaries are the most mathematically, statistically sophisticated people in the world. They've been trained for it, but they don't do that stuff. They are too busy making decent money telling insurance companies to stop insuring homes along the coast in Florida, because their mathematical and analysis says that if you keep insuring these homes, you're going to lose your asses.
Well, Nick's in the background. Maybe he'll join us in the conversation and everything. I'm geared to bring up one of his favorite people, and all along those lines, so this may get him to come out of hiding and everything like that. But 750 HHS employees have signed a signed letter to RFK Jr. asking him to stop spreading misinformation. So hundreds of federal health workers are saying that RFK Jr. has put Americans in danger, and
it's also putting them in danger. So this guy gets the COVID vax, and then he feels bad, and he thinks, well, it's because he reads a bunch of information saying, well, the vax is what gave me headaches or some shit. The guy, now initially the report said he put 180 bullets into the CDC headquarters. I've seen a later report saying it was 500 rounds, 500 bullet holes into the CDC building, killing a cop. And that was fairly clearly the result of, because the guy left some writing saying, yeah, that he was pissed off. He blames the COVID vaccine, so he's going to go shoot up the CDC. And so these people are right that it's not only endangering the public, but it endangered them when a maniac with a semi-auto rifle puts 40 dozen bullets into their building.
Yep. That's being
that kind of proves my point. It's very important to make sure, conspiracy theories, not spreading misinformation. And, Rick, I'm not saying that to the statistical election. You just got to make sure that is done prudently in the right way. And again, I abhor any kind of hints of conspiracies of any kind because of what you just said. The example of COVID.
Yeah, I don't love conspiracy theories. I mean, I think maybe 1% of them turn out to be true. Like the one that turned out to be true in the U.S. was that the CIA was in the crack business in inner cities in the 1980s. Yeah. The CIA was helping crack dealers, and then they took the money and they turned it around and used it to fund, I think, Iran-Contra under Reagan.
Right.
Which is
There's a few that the government was a bit, the CIA with the black, was it that army division, infecting them with syphilis, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. So,
some conspiracies, even though they're ridiculous, turn out to be true. But 99% don't, like Marilyn Monroe, that they grabbed her and that she knew too much and they shoved a bunch of pills up her butt and made it look like suicide. I mean, yeah, maybe, but probably not. That they're, the assassination of JFK, that there were 3 snipers all over the place. We don't know. We'll never know, probably. But odds are, in instances like that, when there's not definitive proof, it's usually the simplest explanation, which is like one crazy asshole.
Yeah, that's very true, but it might be more than 1%. I know that I brought up several times COINTELPRO, which was a deliberate attempt to undermine the civil rights campaign, and that is a known initiative that was put out there, and it's not necessarily a conspiracy theory by Hoover and others, because they were trying to spread misinformation about several of the civil rights leaders, and there were also moles that were in several of those organizations that were giving information back to the FBI and some of the other security agencies as well. So that's
I think Hoover was running like multiple operations. There was COINTEL, and there were other ones. Then that Hoover was infiltrating student groups like the SDS and the Weathermen and trying to not only get find out what they're up to, but also encourage them to be worse and more dangerous, so they could, so it would show America that hippies are dangerous.
Right, they're definitely doing that with the student groups as well. By the way, another story that I just saw that I'm here curious y'all's thoughts, and it does involve the law. Like I said, maybe Nick will come out on this one. But federal judges have blocked Texas law requiring the 10 Commandments be displayed in the classrooms, because originally Texas was going to have a law that they had to be displayed in, I believe, all classrooms. But the judges halted that law and everything. So we'll see if this is one that stays overturned, or if they're going to take it to the Supreme Court and then it'll get approved, and then we'll see the 10 Commandments on the various classrooms there in Texas, and then maybe it spreads to classrooms in other places as well. So what do you think? I think both of you have, you got, Rick, I know you got kids that are a daughter that is.
All right, so a lot of this is noise where, so we're fighting over the 10 Commandments in classrooms. When you're fighting, I like to say that check your pockets when you're hearing about stories like this, because stories like this run interference and squeeze out of your you can only have so much attention. There are only so many hours in a day to cover news stories. So when you have stories like this, it's squeezing out other stories about Republicans doing shit that really affects you. Hurting Social Security and Medicaid and food stamps and all that. Though they don't call it food stamps anymore, they call it SNAP. And when we get all worked up on opposite sides of trans issues, trans people are actually, a survey shows more trans people than ever before in the U.S., 2.8 million, but that's still less than 1% of the population. So when we argue about trans stuff, that's running cover for the Republicans pulling other bullshit. Like when we did Lansford, when Lance and I were arguing on Sunday, he talked about all the wonderful tax cuts that poor people are getting from the big, beautiful bill. But what nobody talks about is all those tax cuts go away after 2028, and they only exempt you on part of your income, while rich people tax cuts are permanent and average for the 0.01% or 0.1%, $400,000 in tax savings. But you don't hear about the finer details because we are too busy arguing about trans stuff. And I would happily have 10 commandments in every freaking classroom if it meant that we could have Roe v. Wade back, right, or that the Social Security cuts would go away.
Yeah, that's what they're talking about over there in Texas.
The GOP is fantastic at putting up these social bullshit talking points. I agree.
What is? Yeah. Hey, he just went off mute. Hey, Jacoby, you're over there and everything along those lines. So I was just wondering your thoughts. It seems like every time I turn around, there's a new state that is coming up with a immigration detention center, and they're giving it some sort of name that is, I guess, supposed to be QC or whatever, because we had deportation, the one that had depot in the name of it and everything like that. Rick can correct me on the title of it. I know it was kind of a play on Home Depot. Then you had Alligator Alcatraz, and now they've got one in Nebraska called Cornhusker Clink.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna make big money having a consulting company that just names all these new prisons. I've got one. I've got Arizona Auschwitz. I've got the Pennsylvania Pokey. You give me 10 grand and what state you're from, and I will give you half a dozen names for the detention center that you're going to put in there.
So what are you going to call the one in North Carolina with the Tar Heel State?
I got to get on the thesaurus and find all the different names for prisons and find a name for a prison. All right, the North Carolina, not so good for immigrants. That's bad. That's a rejected title. But
please don't call them prisons. They're not prisons.
Detentions. Yeah, they're places to hold immigrants.
They're internment.
More than half of whom
prisons imply that it's full of criminals. That's just
right.
Not
so overstaying your visa, staying in the U.S. is
internment camp. That's what they are. The cruelty is the point. They're internment camps for these individuals because the whole thing is that this is, again, this flows back to the individuals that voted for Trump. Cruelty was the point. They didn't vote for Trump.
Let's make it the title: Carolina Cruelty Camp. Cruel camp.
So I mean that's all it is, and they never cared about all this other stuff that they claimed that it's about cruelty is the point. They wanted to do these bad things to these individuals in the first place. They've dehumanized them from the start. So therefore, hey, anybody brown, this is what you're going to get.
So also more than half of them in these detention centers have committed exactly 0 frickin' crimes, because overstaying your visa is not a criminal offense. It's a civil offense. And you can argue about whether it should be criminal or not, but under current law, it's not a criminal offense. So 52% of the people in a lot of these detention centers haven't broken the law at all.
There's reporting
No.
now that ICE agents don't show their
Really?
ID. They don't show any information saying where they're from or why they're there. And these videos, these stories have to continue to be shared.
And then this could be an easy win for Trump, which is, if we can say that half the people in these centers haven't committed any crimes, Trump can say, well, and should, because it's part of it, would be his brand, say, well, we need to make it a criminal offense, like overstaying your visa. We should make that a crime.
Hey, Rick, hold on a second, because I just saw an article, and this is for everybody on the panel. This makes no sense to me and everything, but maybe y'all can help me clarify this for me. But Trump is supposed to be tightening security in D.C. At least that's what he says. That's the reason he's bringing the National Guard, because they're supposed to have this crime wave or something going on and everything like that. But I just saw an article on the AP News that said the U.S. attorney will no longer bring felony charges against people for carrying rifles or shotguns in D.C. So are we just going to have a bunch of mercenaries coming into D.C. with a bunch of rifles and shotguns?
Yes.
Yeah, they love that. They love the cosplay. We had a giant cosplay on January 6th, 2021, where cosplayers from all over America gathered to have, it was like a Comic-Con except for MAGAs, and that they forgot to book the venue, which was the U.S. Capitol, so they had to kind of break in to hold, a Republicon 2021.
Hey, Nikki, what's our next climate change lesson for today? I'm looking forward to
Oh,
it.
well, we already know climate change is a hoax, so we kind of went through that yesterday. I think what we need to do is really discuss this immigration thing. Let's discuss immigration, because you all agreed incorrectly that overstaying your visa is okay, and frankly, it's not.
We
okay.
didn't say that. In fact,
have-
I said,
Okay, well, you've broken the law. Let's put it that way. Okay, now, I don't know about you, but I believe
Nick,
everybody
is it a
here on
civil
this
offense?
panel, everybody here on this panel,
Is it a
except
civil
for
offense?
me, I have immigrated to another
Nick,
country,
Nick,
and I was
before we
very
get there, is it a
careful
civil
to
offense?
obey their laws.
Nick,
And
what
the
kind of-
reason
what kind of-
why in
how
Spain,
Is
if
it
you don't, they
due
will
is it a
deport
civil
you.
offense to
Okay,
overstay your
I
visa?
don't know why you give these
Due
people the time of
process.
day. The minute
Due
they overstay their
process.
visa, deport
You're a
them,
lawyer.
fine them,
Due
deport them,
process.
Nick, here we go.
sanction
Here we go. You wanted this immigration fight. Here's the immigration
Yeah,
fight
yeah,
for
yeah.
you.
Come to Papa
again,
with the
what you
immigration fight. Come on.
again in law, is it a civil offense? Answer the question. Is it civil? Is it a civil offense to overstay the visa?
Well, apparently the answer is yes. You broke
Okay,
the law.
Is it a civil offense for speeding?
Yeah, that's a offense there too. And you can't.
So actually, overstaying your visa.
Actually, I believe speeding could also be.
Since you've already
deemed as
answered the
what they call
question,
infraction.
So overstaying, you wanted this immigration fight. So overstaying your visa is similar to, or overstaying your visa and actually even crossing the border. Both are civil offenses.
Illegally crossing the border.
So therefore,
Jacoby,
you're talking about deporting people.
Please.
You're wanting to
Illegally
deport people.
crossing.
You're wanting to deport.
I cross the border all the time.
You're wanting to deport people just as you deport
I
people who
cross-
speed, just as people who may trespass. That's the kind of people that you want to deport. So let's get back to other parts of this immigration fight. Let's get back to other pieces of the immigration fight.
Where do these people think? Black, brown, yellow, or otherwise?
In terms of the actual immigration situation, now the individuals that are actually trying to who have overstayed their visa and are actually going to court. You know what's happening to them right now? Their cases are being dropped, and they're being told that they
all the cases are being dropped.
Hold on, Nick. Hold on. You wanted this
That's a
fight.
generalization. Come on, John. Why don't you wake up and tell us a generalization?
You asked
Some
for
of the
this.
analysis.
You asked for this. You
Yeah.
asked for this butt whooping here.
That's because
So
it's
you
BS.
asked for this
John
butt
knows.
whooping here. Let's finish this butt whooping and then accept it and say thank you. So, so now the people who actually have overstayed their visas are actually following the process, following the legal process that they're supposed to do, and actually go to court. Now, what this Trump administration is doing is having the court system, having those judges drop those cases. So now you're actually taking away a legal pathway for them to actually have their pathway to citizenship or actually do what they're supposed to be doing. So now you're criminalizing people who are actually following the law. So what you're doing is wrong in that place. So it also, in terms of asylum seeking, these individuals are actually going to the border to seek asylum and actually looking for individual judges and everybody to
why do they need to go here?
Hold on, Nick. Take this butt whooping and be happy about it. Now you're saying that you want people to follow the law, but you're actually another pathway that you're taking away. Hold on, Nick. You got to take the butt whooping and be happy about it because you're not making
Kamala, baby.
Let's take this butt whooping and keep on smiling. Take the butt whooping and keep on smiling. Now people are actually going to follow the law in terms of trying to seek asylum. Actually, even when they're trying to go to to get their cases adjudicated, they're following the law, and you're taking away that pathway when you're criminalizing these people who are coming to the border, and actually those who have received notices to go to court and actually get their citizenship and get checked out. You're taking away that. Also, you're taking away due process because actually. The Homeland Security, the head of Homeland Security said that they are using the color of the skin, the location they're working, and actually even as another way how they're speaking. All ways of using racism to deport these individuals. So again, you're taking away pathways. You're actually criminalizing them on their skin and who they are. So you're using racism to criminalize these people. So again, everything you're saying is wrong. What you're actually advocating for is wrong. And last, but the cherry on top, you control the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and have yet to put any immigration bill on the floor. So you don't care about immigration.
They don't have
all
to.
You want to do, hold on. All you want to do is deport brown people. That is what you're.
Well, if they're coming in illegally and they're brown, they're going to be deported. If they come in illegally and they're white, they'll be deported.
Look at the numbers.
Okay? I'm just telling you the real problem that we're seeing.
Are they saying
the attitude of no gratitude?
Are they hanging out?
I can't even walk into Spain.
Nick.
Okay, but other than Sasha and I went through immigration process.
Or are they hanging
you never
out?
did, Toby, so you don't know what you're talking about. So, Toby, when did you immigrate to anywhere? To Toby, name one country you immigrated to.
Oh, Nick, hold on.
Name one country you immigrated. You ever set a foot outside of
Hold on, Nick.
Well, I see you immigrated to Raleigh.
Nick, let's do this because you're trying to make.
Come on, get your butt whooped. You immigrated to Raleigh.
Rather than
That's a big way to go.
Hold on, Nick. Listen, you're trying to take the personal route because you think you can win on emotion because you can't accept the facts. Because
is Sasha. Sasha and I have first-hand experience. We're listening to you who have zero experience.
You're a lawyer and don't seem to understand the law. So why would I go to you for law?
Yeah,
because you don't understand Sasha. He knows about immigration. He had to immigrate from Russia.
That is taking it personal.
Yeah. Can we listen to Sasha? He had to immigrate from Russia. He has probably an immigration story.
Let's give 15 minutes to Jatovi to finish his speech. Jatovi, is 15 minutes. Are you going to make it?
Oh, I'm good, Sasha. You go ahead.
Go for it.
Okay, let's hear real stories. Sasha.
Well, what can I say? Many years ago, when I and my family came to Canada, there were a lot of challenges. The language, finding a place to reside, finding work opportunities, employment opportunities, whatever it might be, or business opportunities in some cases. It all had to be accomplished relatively quickly. Most of the people that I know personally, they all made very well. They've learned the language, they found employment opportunities, some of them business opportunities, some of them in professions after going through exams, whether it's medicine or accounting or some other areas. Not too many lawyers, by the way. I don't know why. Not too many lawyers. Few, but not too many. In second generation, actually, there was many more lawyers because their parents started to appreciate what means law profession, and of course started to orient their children to learn the law and practice the law and so on. So now we have a lot of more immigrants from Soviet Union, at least whose children and now grandchildren, they are in a law profession, which is very, very good. So at least I have a great choice of lawyers if I need them. So this is a process. We arrived to Canada legally. All our papers were processed while we were waiting in Rome, in Italy, for 8 months. So at that time, our papers were all processed. We had several interviews. We had medical commission, and actually, so we got landed immigrant status and arrived to Canada. And 3 years later, we became Canadian citizenship. So I'm not aware how you can do through all this process illegally, because you have to then enter. You cannot swim through ocean, or you cannot come through the air illegally, but you can cross the border from United States. And I'm not aware how that is being dealt with. How is it being processed? I have no idea, and I'm not so sure how many illegal immigrants coming from U.S. to Canada. I hope not too many, but I have no numbers and no idea whatsoever. Now, I'm going to leave in a few minutes. I want to tell you about some very important information that I will discuss at 5 o'clock later on today on the World Economic Show. Yeah, and also we'll have a Modern Investing Show today instead of Wednesday at noon, 12 o'clock. So you're all welcome to follow up. There are a lot of new information coming up. Thank you very much.
No problem. And
I want to briefly talk about civil offenses versus criminal offenses, where it seems mystifying that somebody can overstay their visa and not be a criminal, but there's a whole, and Nick as a lawyer can tell you, there's a whole slew of things that are illegal or against regulation that don't make you a criminal. If you don't shovel your walk and it gets icy and people slip and fall, that doesn't make you a criminal. You might be subject to a lawsuit, but it's not a criminal offense. If a tree is dropping berries on your car, it's your neighbor's tree, and you cut it down, doesn't make you a criminal. You can be sued. There's all this stuff. If you're a landlord and you keep somebody's damage deposit, even though they left the apartment clean, that doesn't make you a criminal. There's a whole.
Along those same lines, if you don't pick up your dog poop and all along those lines, I don't know that makes you a criminal. It doesn't make you the greatest citizen in the world.
No, there's all this stuff where you're subject to civil action. Somebody
may be subject to sanctions, but the thing is, they just don't classify you as a criminal. But the real problem that we're seeing, and the reason why the left is so wrong on this issue, is for some reason they believe they can violate civil laws and it's okay. And frankly, it's not okay. And so when they get punished, they cry so hard. I can hear Jacoby's tears all the way from here. In other words, it's like
back to round two.
Sweat with his tears dripping about how it's got to be racism. No. There's plenty of people that immigrate from Latin America legally.
Nick,
Plenty of them. And you know what? They don't have any problems. As a matter of fact, they're clients of mine.
Nick,
Okay.
I just pointed out to you.
But the one that violates the law, no, you don't get a free pass and you can't
Nick,
cut in line.
Nick,
That's the
I
reason
just
when I came to
pointed out
Spain,
to
I
you,
made sure
Nick,
I followed a law.
Nick,
And
Nick,
trabaja español.
Nick,
Not
okay,
sitting
we're
there
going round
saying,
two now.
habla
And off round one,
English,
here's round
no
two.
español.
Again, and I'm going to have to
No.
repeat in round two what I just pointed out to
And
you.
that's the reason
round
your
one.
party lost.
Now,
So
as
continue
you
to
just stated,
thinking,
Nick, as you kind of
continue
stated,
to thinking,
I don't know
and
why it's
we'll
not
see the
getting
Republicans.
I don't know why it's
and
not getting
the law.
through, but you just keep saying the same thing. One, people are following the law when he ran away. People are following the law. People are actually going to the courthouses to actually for their assigned times to adjudicate their cases. That is following the law. That is not jumping in line. When they overstay their visas, they're again following the law, not jumping in line. What ends up happening, or right now, is the fact that because of Stephen Miller, a well-known white supremacist, let's not do this sanitization of, hey, he's a white nationalist. It's the same thing. A white nationalist is a white supremacist. Same difference. So when Stephen Miller has pushed hard to try and up these numbers because they can't find these quote unquote criminals that they demonize. They couldn't find the cats and the dogs being eaten in Ohio, so they can't find all these massive amounts of criminals that were released from all these places into the US, all these lines. So what they're having to do is demonize and actually create criminals. Because if you look at the statistics, and Rick, since you're on the computer right there, you can actually look up the statistics that the majority of the individuals that have been deported do not have a criminal record. They do not have a criminal record.
But did they break the law?
Hold on, wait, Nick.
Can you answer my question? Did they break the law?
Miller and Donald Trump said is that they're going after the worst of the worst. The people that are raping your kids, the people that are doing all this. No, the vast majority aren't.
You don't ask Rick.
What, for example, they deported a woman the other
You're
day.
just going on liberal talking points.
They detained this young lady. Didn't give her due process because they're not giving the individuals due process. They detained this lady because they couldn't figure out if she were an immigrant or not. And then they, for some odd reason, from the uproar around her, she ended up getting released. She was a U.S. citizen, but they're detaining her based on the color of her skin, and she speaks Spanish. That is why
I have the numbers.
Okay, give me
right now. About 59,400 people are in ICE detention as of August 10th, and 70.4% of those people have no criminal convictions.
Okay,
so
that's not my question.
That
I'm going
actually
to ask the question again.
Right there tells you
Did they break the law?
Hold on, Nick.
You guys
going to go down some pathway of some. We're going to know. That is right there is telling you that 70+ percentage have no criminal record. That means they are not going out and doing anything that you want to complain that, oh, they're breaking the law. We just already established.
I'm just asking the question. You refuse to answer.
We established
Rick, Judge, can you instruct the witness to answer the question and stop rambling?
I'm not rambling.
Nick keeps saying about breaking the law. So speeding down the highway or down the road is breaking the law. So anybody that breaks the law,
I'm getting liberal.
Don't overtalk me. Do not interrupt me. Okay? You keep saying anybody that's broken the law, speeding tickets. Please do not overtalk over me. Thank you. You keep talking about breaking the law. All right? Speeding ticket is breaking the law.
Yeah.
And as Joe Tovey says, due process. Okay? If you speed, do not interrupt me. Okay? Thank you. As I was saying, speeding is breaking the law. You're gone. Everybody's gone.
Okay, so all right.
So due process.
Okay,
my point is due process. And Jacoby says, as Jacoby said, you're a friggin' lawyer.
I'm asking a
I don't
question,
get
and
it.
you guys won't answer it, so I'll ask Rick the question because at least he'll be honest. Did they break the law by overstaying their visa?
Yeah, but you can break the law
Okay.
without being
I
a
have-
criminal.
I have no further
No, hold on, wait,
questions.
Nick.
for this
Here's a question for you then.
I have
Because
no
yes, we
further
all agree.
questions.
We all agree. Hold on. Oh, you ran away.
But yeah, like if you roll a stop sign, which people do in my neighborhood all the freaking time, you're an a-hole, but you're not a criminal.
And Nick won't answer the question. If you roll that stop sign, does that mean you should be deported to a prison in El Salvador?
No, but like, so Stephen Miller and Trump promised us that the worst people in America, the most dangerous people in America, were immigrants, and they were going to be rounded up and deported. And then the evidence is that a lot of that the majority of these people are not terrible people. That they've come to America, they've applied for asylum, which is perfectly legal. Some of them have come to America and overstayed their visas, not legal, but otherwise have led a pretty exemplary lives, particularly in the case of Dreamers. So, the promised wave of criminals that were going to be rounded up hasn't really come to fruition under the ICE deportation actions. But most of these people are, and you see it if you live in a city with a ton of immigrants, that most of them are leading quiet lives and wanting just to come here and work. And yeah, you got some MS-13, but I don't see them. I see, I'm sure there are parts of town where I'd be more likely to see gangsters. But for the most part, immigrants are not frickin' gangsters.
And if you go back to when I was talking about the demonization of them, remember when the whole immigration, when they started this whole push to deport whomever and deport the criminals, what they did is they took Dr. Phil to create a TV show around them deporting them. Remember the show Cops? Remember what was a big problem with Cops? At the very beginning of Cops, they were just showing black people being arrested. That was the issue. What did they do with this whole immigration thing? It was nothing but Hispanic individuals being arrested. Nothing but brown people being arrested. It was the same thing. So what they tried to do was create an image of anybody brown, anybody who spoke Spanish, they were a criminal. That was what they did. And that's this administration. That's what they're doing.
Actually, the ICE deportations, that in of itself is breaking the law.
I mean, yeah, Christine Nome, who runs the agency, is herself like super duper morally compromised. She had to move out of her condo into a free apartment or house or some shit on the grounds of some naval facility because paparazzi were taking too many pictures of her and the married guy that she is banging, Corey Lewandowski. She's been having an affair for many years she's married, and this guy she's banging is married, and she's had to change where she lives, so it makes it harder for people to catch her being more immoral. She's and that's not against the law, but she is kind of an asshole.
These ICE expulsions are illegal because they have not followed due process. Everybody has a right for due process in America.
Even regardless of whether
Nick,
you're a citizen.
as a lawyer, he should know. He knows that. So I don't know what the hell he's saying.
Yeah, there's no telling. We're going to wrap up and everything along those lines and everything. But I did find out that J.D. Vance's nickname apparently is Dance Vance or something along those lines. And to Toby's point earlier, it sounds like if there were people that were speeding and doing other things, according to what Nick is saying, then we're going to send them off to Uganda. So apparently Uganda is going to take some of our folks and all along those lines, which would make absolutely no sense. So
yeah, one dream. There's, you know, you hear all these extreme cases. Maybe they're not extreme. Maybe they're closer to typical. This one young woman, 20 years old, a dreamer, has been here for 15 years. You know, is a student, is never done anything illegal. She's not the one who brought herself to America. Her parents did. She got a warning for driving too close to a semi-truck on the freeway, which I didn't even know was a thing. The cop who pulled her over gives her a warning because maybe it isn't a thing. Maybe he can't ticket her, sends her on her way, but then gives her vehicle information to ICE. And then they swoop in, and this woman's life is now in ruins, and she's in detention because she drove too close to a semi-truck.
It's sad that Nick, as a lawyer, doesn't give a shit about due diligence.
I'll see you guys maybe this afternoon.
all right. On that note, we're going to have more conversation at 5 o'clock. But right now, let's get on out of here.